getting to know each individual player and what motivates them, what motivates each of them differently, what they respond to, and not just us as coaches knowing that, but the players knowing that. Just because we've identified them as a skillful player doesn't mean that we will then take them. We have our players meet them, we get a feel for, are they good people? Are they good characters? Will they get along with the players that we have? Knowledge that I've gained from him and from being exposed to the sport and the culture so early on, and then the knowledge that I've continued to gain from the coaching courses and everything that I've taken, getting to give that back to the players has been fun.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach Podcast with Coach Luca. I hope you're well, and over the last week or so we may have seen quiet, but I've taken a short break. After a year round of coaching, full-time teaching, university and the podcast itself, it's nice just to get some downtime and actually enjoy my first holiday as an adult, braving the flight and going abroad. It wasn't abroad that I wasn't looking forward to, it was just the flights and that little phobia which Dennis Bergkamp had himself. It is one that I braved and went on and enjoyed the holiday. So if the last week has seemed quiet, I can only apologise, but I hope you've had two great back-to-back episodes that you've listened to and that you've taken notes from. One with Sophie, where she talks about social inclusion, additional needs and disability, looking at the great work she does at Barton FC and her strategies in supporting volunteers, as well as then Coach Ready and the course which is available for you to develop individually as part of your CPD with Molly Grisham. Two wonderful back-to-back episodes, and I hope that you've enjoyed them over the last week and really enjoyed them. But in this week's episode, I'm delighted to welcome assistant women's coach for Lebanon Valley College, assistant coach Courtney Browning. Now, it's fantastic to have her on the programme. It's fantastic to have her on the podcast itself. Now, this is a first for me because I've now interviewed an assistant manager and a first team manager, or the manager, and I've been lucky to have both these coaches on the podcast. So in a few weeks, you will hear from the head coach of Courtney's, whereby you get a full picture and all-rounded insight into what they do on their programme and the wonderful work that they do and how they complement each other. So it was fantastic to sort of have this link between Courtney's and her head coaches and have this reflection point of building the big picture. But focusing on this week's episode with Courtney, it was wonderful to speak to her because she gives off so much energy and so much insights. Someone who's growing a part of the game, someone who's going to go really, really far. It was just wonderful to pick off her knowledge and really have the opportunity to speak to her. I felt so much where she's going to go really far in the future, and someone who I really enjoyed talking to because she had so much to offer. In this episode, we talked about their situations and strategies and how that may play out, the playing principles such as create, control, exploit, the angles, the timings and the situations. We then talked about how what you see as standards and how that plays out within the infrastructure, within the framework, how that may impact decisions on selection of players, how that looks over the course of a season, how to support players, and then choosing players themselves and the question of chances of being a player and what those questions may look like underneath that. Overall, within this episode, we talked about the fear factor, mentality, recruitment, leadership and development, player expectations, interchanging principles, session structure, and communication sessions. Interchanging principles is always an interesting topic and always an interesting discussion point. Some coaches don't like interchanging principles, some coaches adapt to them and adapt their game week to week depending on what the opposition are doing. Now, it's fascinating to hear all those different insights and topic areas, and there's so many great questions and areas which you can really delve into whilst listening to Courtney. I had such a wonderful time speaking to her, and I hope that you're doing well, Courtney, and this episode is for you this week. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Podcast Addict. You can also find it on Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Flickr. It's at TRC Podcast _ on Twitter. I'm Anthony_Luca96. Drop a like, drop a follow, drop a subscribe, leave a comment. It is really appreciated. Every subscribe and follow that you leave really helps the podcast grow. I hope you enjoy this episode and continue to add to your journal and your notes because there is so much within this. This week's episode is Courtney Browning, and I thank you very much for being a part of this. Look forward to listening to her head coach in a few weeks' time, whereby you'll get an all-rounded picture, an all-round topic in terms of this entire infrastructure and framework which they deliver. Both wonderful individuals, and I'm so lucky to have spoken to both of them. They are wonderful people who are delivering on a wonderful program with such great ideas. They're going to go far as a collective. They're going to go far as individuals. When I spoke to both of them, I'm surprised that they're not working on the US national team structure somewhere. They are both brilliant people. Thank you for being part of the Reflective Coach podcast. Take much away. This week's episode is Courtney Browning. Thank you from me, Coach Luca.
We would rather give them the freedom with that than just say, you're going to do this, you're going to pass here, you're going to pass there, and then we're going to go through. It's kind of, what we think we see on the sidelines versus what they see as a player on the ball, could be different. So that's how we instruct them. Well, how are you?
I'm good. You okay?
Yep, all good.
Good to hear. How's your day been so far?
Good. Been good.
Yeah, good.
On holiday with the family.
On holiday? Right. Where to?
Virginia. We just went to a lake house. So
oh, yeah?
Different.
Is that far away from where you live, or?
About 3-hour drive, so not too bad. How's your day been?
Yeah, it's been alright. It's actually quite nice here in the UK today. It's real good weather. It's probably the nicest it's been all year so far, so.
That's good.
Yeah, it's right. It's not bad. Yeah, lake house. That's a proper typical like American thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's first time for us. But we've been enjoying it. We're not. I'm not made for the beach, so we switched it up and went somewhere a little less sunny.
Well, all I can say is fair play to having a podcast call during some time away, which is supposed to be away from coaching and some downtime, etc.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. It's no problem.
Appreciate your time. So, are you on the back end of the season now, or is this just a break in between, or?
So we're finishing up now because all finals week has ended for our players. So we only train and have them during the school semester. So once they go away for the summer, we'll send them with stuff, but with rules we are pretty much hands off during the summer.
Hands off. And in terms of that time then, is that mostly preparation then for next year? Is it, looking at other players? Is there anything that you tend to do which you then focus on in this period of time?
This period of time, mostly we're getting them prepared. So we'll be sending out their packet for them to do over the summer, whether it's, strength and conditioning training or sprint. It's mostly fitness training to get them ready for the season. And for us, as an administrative side, we'll still be continuing to recruiting. We'll be going to a lot of tournaments in the summer. But it is kind of slowing down, and then as it gets close to June, July, it's just getting everything ready for the August.
Ready to go again and start another season.
Yes, yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, so you're currently an assistant coach at Lebanon Valley, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So I'm there with them now. I joined with them in January, so this will be my first fall season with them. I've had a spring season with them, but that's what I'm doing now. And
how long you been coaching in total?
Coaching in college about 2.5 to 3 years, but coaching in total, when I was growing up, as soon as I finished middle school, which is about I think probably I want to say 14, 15, and went into high school, then I was helping coach the middle school team that I played on. So I would volunteer with that, or I'd work camps and clinics and stuff like that. But in terms of actual college coaching, about 3 years.
Yeah, and good experience so far?
Yeah, I love it. I always knew I wanted to coach. I always knew I wanted to stay connected to the game in some way. But getting to do what I love every day and stay involved with it, I couldn't ask for a better job.
Absolutely, I'm very jealous of you because over in America, also, you have all these amazing jobs in terms of college opportunities, working full time. The great platform which is out in America, and that's something that we could really do with here in Britain. But very jealous of what you're doing every day.
I can't say enough about getting to. I'm fortunate that I'm able to do that. But yes, thanks.
So in terms of looking at the full season now, is there something which you have in the back of your mind which you'd like to instill for the season coming, or is it just working off what the league coach wants and then sort of building on that?
For us, it's more of a collaborative effort. The current boss I have, Frank, I worked with him at the previous university. So for us, our focus is just kind of honing what we want to do and what we want to do with the team, because when he left and took the position for the first couple months, he didn't have the help. He didn't have me helping him doing not just the on-field, the tactics, but we're building a recovery program for them after matches. We're working on how just constantly trying to improve and learn and grow, and how we teach them and how we help them to get to where they need to be on the field. We've been working on not just the football soccer aspect of it, but the movement activation, the just helping them become well-rounded athletes. So that is right now kind of where we're at.
And it's good that you've moved on to, say a new project with something that you previously worked with, because that way you both understand what the expectations is from each other. It's easier to have that harmony, that synergy, that collaboration, as you said, and it's easier then to instill what you've done previously somewhere new and to build on what you say, those programs for those players, because you've had those experiences together, you know the way you want to perform, and then it's easier to instill from that perspective then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he hired me, but I also, in the interview process, I was choosing someone that I wanted to work for. We have very similar coaching philosophies, and, we are able to discuss, bounce ideas off each other. We could do different things, and having a staff that's been together for that many years to keep working on instead of switching it all the time. It's been, you're right, it's been very helpful.
And I think what you said there is quite key, is choosing the right move and job that fits you. So, you might be highly motivated, you might be saying, I want to be a head coach in, say, 3 years, and then you get the 3 years and you might have a head coach role come to you, but it may not be exactly the right role for you, and therefore, it might be not the right decision to take that job, even though it is a head coach, because you might not have the right feeling behind it. It might not be the right time. The resources might be scarce. So sometimes making the right decision is absolutely key, I think, in terms of your own perspective and towards where you're going long term.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. I want to do this the right way. Obviously, eventually, long term, I'd like to be a head coach. I'd like to be in charge. But right now, I'm quite happy with the role that I'm in, and learning, and not just learning from the person that I'm working with now. I want to also work with multiple different coaches, find how I want to coach, how I want to do things in the long run. But yeah, to me, that's very important. Taking my time and slowly developing and just continuing to learn.
And in terms of that, then, also, you're building your own philosophy for when you become a head coach and you're ready to take over the world and get ready in terms of changing the game. You develop that philosophy over a period of time, and in the back of your mind, you have ways that you want to play, and then you're able to pick off in terms of what you are doing. So what is the way that you sort of looking to play next year in the system and the style that you're going to integrate?
So for us, we've been just, like I said, we're trying to hone the way that we do things and keep getting it better. But how we do our stuff, our philosophy and what we want them to do, we use positional play. It's a concept that we use to create and control, and its concept is to create, control, and exploit space. It's a collective method of playing that we focus on, like angles, distance, timing, line situations. But our goal is not just to get the team tactically better to play, it's also to teach and to constantly grow and constantly help those players learn and develop not just cognitive but character as well. So that's kind of what we do with our players.
And in terms of that character, then, what are you looking for in terms of your players, or expect from them?
Good people. Being able to put the ball in the back of the net is great. But if they're not a good person, if they're not able to not help themselves but help their teammates around them, that for us that is number one. That is just without that, you can't really get very far.
And character is the key to building a team and putting it together. And because it creates that harmony, it helps build the bridges between the relationships. It helps build on that philosophy. It helps build on terms of the expectations and what may be there. And that you might have a great style of play where you're absolutely dominating games, and you might be in a great position where say you're top of the league or top of the table, etc. But you come up against a really difficult period of time where you come up against some other top tier teams, and you might be impacted by one or two injuries, etc. But therefore, you might have a player who's able to step up and step in, and because of their character and their leadership, and although they may be less technical compared to the players that are out injured, they may actually be beneficial during that period of time because of what they're actually able to bring on the pitch then when they're filling in the shoes of the other players.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, and that's something that we try and develop with them. Like I said, we're not just, how we say it, you were asking what we do with them for the fall. We put them through a leadership development program, and reiterating that point that you are a team, you are working together. Yes, you may be a reserve or a bench player at that point, but when your moment steps up, can your teammates help you and help them get to where they need to be with stuff like that, and just getting to know each individual player and what motivates them, what motivates each of them differently, what they respond to, and not just us as coaches knowing that, but the players knowing that and having a better collaborative group to help each other.
So you're quite spoiled for choice then at college level, because when it comes down to recruitment, you've got thousands of athletes to choose from year after year. So if you got say a group of 100 players in front of you one week and you can't find the actual characters that you want in that, then say next week you might have another talent showcase whereby you might have another 100 players, and then you've got the choice of choosing from them. So realistically, it's great to sort of be at college level because you're able to sort of then pick and choose in that regard then.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because we'll go to showcases, we'll go to tournaments, we'll identify players, and then, we're either getting them on a phone call or we're getting them on campus, but that just because we've identified them as a skillful player doesn't mean that we will then take them. We have our players meet them, we get a feel for, are they good people? Are they good characters? Will they get along with the players that we have? And will they fit well into our environment? And are they willing to be coachable, or are they willing to be working? So that is something that, especially in the recruiting process, we are able to, like you said, kind of pick and choose with that. We're a little spoiled for choice with that.
And in terms of that, will that impact then your, say, career decisions? Because, you're at a great opportunity where you have these thousands of players to sort of work at and choose after every year. And say you've got that 5-year process whereby you've had so many players to work with, and you've had X, Y, and Z grow and develop and go different situations. And you've developed naturally this amazing portfolio, and you've had success, and you've done well at the college. But then you're at that 5-point period where you're like, right, I've got a choice of jobs in front of me, whether it's going to say, national level, or you might go in terms of club, for example, or you want to stay at college. Will that sort of impact then? Because, say you went on to, say, a club and then you're limited on resources, then you'd have to choose, say, a selection of players where you have to work within a regional area and work off these players to build the club. Would that sort of then, be difficult, whereas on that college you have those selection of players on a wider pool and scale in that sense then?
Yeah. Sure. I could say it would be difficult, but for me, I find that I feel that college coaching is where I have my passion. That age group that I'm working with, that dynamic, that like you said, club. We don't club. You get them for 2 sessions a week, and then a tournament or a game. Whereas college, we get to help them with everything. We're training them week in and week out, and doing that. For me, that atmosphere is what I love and what I enjoy. Like you said, being able to do more for them. I'm able to put them through recovery programs. I'm able to help them, push them to our strength conditioning coach, our nutritionist, all those things. I love that environment. I can't say that I wouldn't see myself going to other things because you don't know what the future holds. But currently, that is what I enjoy, and that is what pulled me to the college game.
And it sounds great. And, a lot of coaches sort of have like a route in terms of what they want to do. So whether it's, going from like, say, college to club, then to, say, national level, and they know that they want to keep progressing through. And realistically, when they get to national level, they might, do you know what? I actually miss college coaching. I want to get back there. But a lot of college coaches in America seem to be sort of at college level, and they're very happy at college level. And that seems to be something that I quite like.
Yeah, no, it's just it's different. I feel like I just enjoy that environment a lot. It's something that I experienced as a player, and now getting to give back to as a coach to those players that have been through similar experiences. I don't know what it is. I really enjoy it.
And it's great because you get to work with a different selection of players, say, over that 5-year period then, because, you might have a really good group this year and you might have a fantastic experience, and next year the group might be very different in terms of that dynamic, for example. And then the year after you've found a group which was very similar to year one. And therefore, it's just that continuous rolling process which is hard in terms of when players come and go and then you're recruiting, etc. But it's also good because then it re-energizes where you get to work with this different selection of players and you're able to see sort of the production line keep going, and you having that stamp upon them as they're going through, which is really sort of cool to sort of have upon that within the process.
Yeah, and no, you're absolutely right, because every year we're getting a new group. We have the seniors that graduate, we have the freshmen that come in, and it's a new challenge, it's a new group that you have to work with, because yes, those 3 years of sophomore to seniors, they're all the same group, but it's a different team, it's a different atmosphere, it's constantly getting to work with new players and getting to see them develop over those 4 years and then move them on and help them in their future careers. It's a fun environment to be in, that I feel.
And it sounds fun, but, sometimes say, you got a say club level and then you're able to look at a group over a 4-year period, then, you might move on, say 6 players, and then, you gradually build it, and then in 6 years, the group looks different again because you've had that 12-year succession, you've been able to build upon that continuously and what you've wanted to do in terms of that strategy and direction, whereas over, say, a 12-year period, you've had 12 different groups and 12 different restarts, 12 different goes. Do you find that a little bit frustrating in a way, whereas you have to stop-start in terms of going again every year with a new group and reintegrating a philosophy and getting that across? Or is that something that energizes you?
I wouldn't say frustrating, more is with how our college system is in place. We get them in August, and with NCAA Division III, we have about a week, if that, for preseason to get them up to speed with everyone else, and then we start playing. We have preseason matches, and then we start the 1st of September. So that, I think, is the only thing that is we find frustrating, is the American system versus the rest of the world, of not having as long as we want to get that first group, the freshmen up to speed. But then we have the whole season. We have a whole spring off season as well to continue to work with them. So I think that is, for us, that's the biggest hurdle we face.
Yeah, of course, and it definitely sounds like it. So, in that sense, then, are you an American? Were you born in America?
Yeah. So I'm from America. My dad was born in West London, so that's where all my influence comes from. I grew up around the game. I was a World Cup baby, so little, he's got the big England flag around his shoulders, swearing at the TV. That's what I grew up with, and that's why for me, I've always been connected to the game. Always just couldn't see myself not being connected, not coaching, not doing that. And then as I actually got to do it, it kind of confirmed for me that yes, this is what I want to do.
I was going to ask, because your cover photo on Twitter is the England national team. I was like, what's the connection to that then?
Yeah. So that's where that comes from. My dad's from there, and I am a dual citizenship. I am a UK citizen, but I haven't lived there. But yeah, I've been going to and traveling to England since I was 3 months old, and the knowledge that I gained from him and from being exposed to the sport and the culture so early on, and then the knowledge that I've continued to gain from the coaching courses and everything that I've taken, getting to give that back to the players has been fun.
And it sounds definitely an exciting journey and route so far. And, it's great that you have that dual nationality and the option to come here is there for you. Is that something that sort of maybe factors into your thinking whether you would come, say, to the UK from the US, or is it firmly want to stay in the US?
For me, I'm very happy with what I'm doing. I'm very happy in the college game, but I have always really loved the UK. I've been saying since I was little that I want to live there. I would love to live there. I don't know what career path necessarily would take me there or how that would work. But it's just something that I really enjoy, and I love the culture of it. Yeah.
And in terms of that sense then, because, obviously America isn't part of Europe, and obviously UEFA is essentially a European governing body, and the qualifications are, recognised around the world to coach at that level. But in terms of the American system, obviously I think you have the USSFC license and so on. Do you end up progressing from that then onto a UEFA course, or is it solely American scholarship courses that you go through?
Yeah, it's what I've gone the track is the American side, but I do intend on doing the UEFA side as well. And if I'm able to, given the fact that I have a British UK passport, I would love to try and get into the FA and doing stuff with that, because I know the US licenses aren't necessarily as recognized as others. But it's definitely something I want to continue to do, because I feel that in this business, if you think you know it all, you need to get out of this business. I want to constantly learn, constantly get certifications, constantly learning from other people. So it is absolutely something that I plan to do.
And in terms of that, then, say you didn't have that dual, nationality and the opportunity to come across to England and do that UEFA badge and experience over here. What would be the route then for, say, a typical American-only coach to try and get on a UEFA course in America?
So my boss actually he got his UEFA recently. I think he traveled to Scotland to do it and get it through that, and he's done other things, and I believe that is one way to do it, and that's something I haven't fully looked at yet because I'm where I'm at with the C license in the US and stuff like that. But there are other ways to do it, but it's going to be far easier for me having that passport to be able to get into the FA and be able to do those courses.
It's definitely an interesting take, because over here, you originally used to be, you say like here in Wales, you do the Welsh qualifications, and then you naturally progress on to doing the UEFA then. But that started to filter down a little bit more right to our C license here. So essentially, it's easier to get onto that UEFA here. But in America, it seems difficult for coaches to get onto that UEFA if they want to sort of progress into the worldwide scope of things with that license then. And it's quite an interesting ploy in terms of you've got this amazing college system over there which I'm very jealous of and wish we had over here, but then we've sort of got this easier coaching pathway to get on the courses, whereas it's not so easy in America. And I think if we just sort of lent a bit of our coach education over there and took a bit of your college education, the UK and the US could really be going places with it.
Yeah, if we could beg and borrow and steal a little bit from both of us, it would make everyone's lives a little bit easier, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And so then in terms of that American way that you've come through, in terms of the license and the experiences that you've had, and as you say, you've had exposure because of your dad and supporting then the English national team. Do you think that your philosophy is more tailored to the American way, or is it more sort of an English background coming into the American style?
No, for me, it's definitely my background is English. My dad was my coach growing up all the way to college, so I got a lot from him, and then watching the game, and then now, the courses that I'm taking now, I do, the USSF courses and stuff like that. That for me is not necessarily learning an American style. It's more of learning how to coach and present when do you stop? When do you make a point? How do you make a point? Kind of stuff like that. A lot of my influence now is, the positional play that I talk about. Those courses that I'm doing now. That's Togo. That's positional play. It's the main course that what we base our playing and how we coach our college team. was made by a guy called Todd Bean, who married into the Cruyff family. So it's very based on Pep. It's very based on Barcelona, Cruyff. That's the style that it's kind of formed into now, and what I'm learning and what I've been really enjoying to learn and how to help teach those players, the players that I coach that style. But that's, yeah, I think that if that answers your question on that, that's where I'm at with my style.
Very interesting. And then in that sense, then as you say, create, control, exploit. Are you going to be then a heavy a possession-based team, or is it more, say, counter-attack, or is it a bit more balanced? How do you sort of perceive your team to then get to create, control, exploit?
So we describe it as positional play. It's possession with a purpose. Creating numbers up situations, creating rondos, diamonds. You can see it all, on the field. That is the style that we play. It doesn't mean that you cannot go direct sometimes. You cannot keep it simple. But it's the way we teach it is to help our players have that choice and help them to see the game, slow down a bit, looking at the angles, the distance, the timing, and getting into that final third.
And do you find a certain formation fits in terms of that, or as positional play is great because it's interlinking, it's ever switching. So you might end up starting with say a 4-1-3-2, and then suddenly by the 45th minute you're in a 4-3-3 because naturally that's where you've ended up changing. So is it sort of an interchanging system, or is it sort of fixed and then looking at what happens?
It's always changing. We currently usually go out of a 4-3-3, but the game situation will require us maybe to do different tactics, do different formations, or just the group that we have. We're not gonna we say we may want to play the 4-3-3, but if we don't have the players to have it, or if we don't have the players to play it, you can't play it. So it changes, like you said, with how we get a different group each year. It changes with that, and we found that we are able to still stay true to the way that we play, regardless of what formation we're in.
It's definitely an interesting take because, your principles then are ever interlinking and changing and interchanging in that sense, because then, as you're saying, you're adapting to the game situation, and then the players that come through, your system then changes on that. Whereas you might have some coaches where they'd be like, right, it is a 4-3-3 this year, it's a 4-3-3 next year, and it's 4-3-3 the year after, and we have to find the players to fit this system, and these are the principles, and they're not going to change because of that. So, next year you might end up being limited, say, on the recruitment, and therefore what you're able to create is very limited. So then that principle might possibly change in that sense. But some coaches are like, no, these are the principles, and that's what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yeah. No, we definitely, we have a way we want to do things. We're teaching them a certain style. We're trying to get them to all play that way as a team. But we have to understand you can't just, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing multiple times and expecting a different result. We have to learn to be able to change and adapt based on the scenario that we have.
And on that positional play then, obviously as you're creating things and you try to get a certain way of thinking, patterns can be created then to create those familiarities in terms of what the expectations of the players and the way you want to do things. So if you want to create things down the left-hand side continuously, then you're going to maybe create a pattern that allows you to do that. And if your players then are interchanging because of selection, etc., and you're able then to slot other players in, do you believe in patterns as a thing, or is there no such thing as a pattern to you?
Could you clarify what you mean by pattern, please?
So say on a pattern, so I might go from the goalkeeper out to the left back, and the left back into the centre mid. The centre mid then will play through the final third, and then that might be repeated 6 or 7 times every time we get the ball from the goalkeeper, for example. So that might be a pattern that the opposition might realise, they're doing that every time. So then they might change their formation to stop us playing through the final third, and therefore we'd have to be forced to play out wide then to get through to the final third.
We do not specific patterns. We want them to, invite the pressure. You invite the pressure, and we often do attack 1 through 3s or playing the free player. Ours is it would be either, you find the free player, and then if the free player is open, they're inviting the pressure, or they're attacking, or they're finding open players and they're possessing it. We would rather gives them the freedom with that than just saying, you're going to do this, you're going to pass here, you're going to pass there, and then we're going to go through. It's kind of, what we think we see on the sidelines versus what they see as a player on the ball, could be different. So that's how we instruct them.
And I only asked that question because it's interesting to get a take on it, because I was speaking to a coach who was from Belgium a couple of years ago, and he was saying that he doesn't believe in things called patterns. There's no such thing as a pattern in football, and it really got me thinking in terms of what he said to me, and it's stuck with me ever since. And I was like, he's like, no two passes are ever going to be the same, so then there's no such thing as a pattern. I was like, but there is a pattern, because if my team do the same thing 6 times in a row, then that's a pattern, because they're doing it 6 times in a row, the exact same thing. So, it's always been an interesting take in terms of, have my teams ever played with patterns, and is that the expectation in terms of what I want from them? Or are my principles going to be ever changing, whereas my goalkeeper might kick it long, and then the next goal kick, he's going to play to the left back, and then the next goal kick, he's going to play straight into midfield. And it's just that interesting take in terms of how a team might set up and play, in terms of how that might look and correspond their principles to how the principles might then come out in a different way, in contrast to that.
Yeah, and we do have a bit of that. Most of our goal kicks, we start with the keeper, and we'll play out to a centre back, and then you invite the pressure that way, and you find the free player. You do it that way, but it's not a set routine. It's not a set. The situation presents itself. If the opposing team has picked up on what you're doing, you might have to change your tactics. You might have to adjust. So it's never like, this is how we do it. This is the it's ever changing and adaptable to how we play.
And a great question on the FAW courses here is, how do you think the game will look in 10 years' time, or how would you like the game to be looking in 10 years' time? And it's quite hard for us to sort of reflect and look back in terms of, football, say 15 years ago, was bang straight down to the middle, break the lines, typical Sam Allardyce football. But now it's sort of all out from the back, no matter who's doing it, and very limited on terms of that long kicking. So in terms of, say, next 10 years, how would you say football may possibly look in terms of how, it might start out from the back?
God. I think I'd be a millionaire if I could answer that question. I don't know. The game will continue to evolve and change. There's always going to be new schools of thought. There's always going to be new ways of doing it. How, for me personally, I would change depends on what I beg, borrow, and steal. I pick bits and pieces from things that I see. But the game itself, I hope it stays with the route that we're kind of going with, the more thinking, the cognitive. I've gone through this learning process with the way that we play after being a player, and then I've gotten to play on summer teams after that, and the way that I feel I see the game even better, even though I've grown up around it. I would like to continue to go that way, not just mindless dumping it long, not really thinking, not having the players be creative. Because at the end of the day, it's a game. They should be having fun. They should be playing. They should be creating chances, having fun, being creative with what they do. So that for me, if that answers your question.
No, it's definitely an interesting take, because it's quite a tough question, which was sort of asked on that, and again another thing that sort of sits with me, because how do you expect the game to be played in 10 years? And it's like, well, some people might stop playing out from the back, or we might go back to breaking it straight down the middle, and the game might change, or the game might have suddenly 12 players on the pitch. The rules are ever changing, because the UEFA chief was like, oh, do you know what, let's have sin bins and then players limited, and we don't know how the game's going to look, so it's a bit of an impossible question sort of to instill, but we can have that vision and philosophy in terms of how we might perceive it to look and what we want in terms of that. But it's definitely an interesting question. So where those principles, say, are interchanging for your team, and you're allowing that team to be free flowing, in terms of your characteristics as a coach, then do you find them to be very adaptable, open, and interchanging, or are you like, right, these are my characteristics as a coach and this is what I'd like to see?
No, I think it's ever changing, ever growing. When we present something to you, like, this is something we feel is important, this is something we think you should do, but we're always looking for feedback. We're always looking to learn and see how we can improve, how we can do things better, how I can coach players better, how I can reach individuals better. I would never want to be stuck. I hope I don't look like the coach I am in 10 years. I hope I'm constantly evolving, constantly learning, and we do that with our players as well. So I would have to say that is how we would be.
Because, some coaches are like, right, I'm very disciplined and these are my expectations and these are the non-negotiables and it has to be this way or the highway. Whereas you come across as someone who's, oh, do you know what, I might do things this way this year and then next year they might look very different. And that's good for the players then because, one player might have one experience because of their perception. They're like, do you know what, Courtney was the best coach ever and we really enjoyed bouncing off. Whereas a player next year might go, do you know what, oh, I didn't enjoy those sessions, and then they've had a friend coming through the college system and then the friend coming through so, oh no, I don't want these sessions, whereas where you're interchanging is different every year. They're like, you know what, I don't know what you were talking about because Courtney's wicked.
Yeah, no, because we don't, it's not strict, it's not rules. There are things, there's non-negotiables, there are things that we hold standards to, but it's standard. But, we want them to be proud of the program that they're in, the program that they're playing in, so it should be, what do you see as a standard of the standard of the team that we must just not only being accountable, but also just sorry, could you, but for us, that's kind of where we're at with things. It's not just one way of doing things, but it also is. We do play a certain way. We do teach them a certain way, but we also allow them to have freedom within it.
And that's good then, because that creativity then breeds curiosity, and the curiosity is something that can really lack in people at the moment. I think has certainly had a big knock-on effect from COVID because kids aren't really, or the young people aren't really thinking outside the box as much as they used to, or we're trying to get back to that point. And it might just be a UK thing at the moment because we're very mundane in terms of the kids that we're getting through right now, in terms of that that motivation, that push factor, that thinking outside the box element, because they're not really curious about their learning, and therefore it becomes difficult then to try and have that learning and that reflection, as you've mentioned. And that's something which you're quite big on. And then if they don't have that curiosity, how do you then go and instill curiosity into someone who might not have it?
No, exactly. And for us to promote that, we do journaling with them. So after a session, or they'll journal about that session. They'll talk about things what they learned from it, what they enjoyed, and that shows us, have we taught it well enough? Okay, if we're looking at a couple of different journals and we're like, okay, this concept that we were teaching today, they really didn't quite get, or we have to change. We have to find different ways to get that point across to help them learn, because each of them, learn differently. But it promotes that, just that they understand that it's not just us saying, you do this and this is how we do it. It's a collaborative effort. I've always said for myself as a coach, I want the players and the people that follow me to follow me because they want to, not because they have to.
I love that. Follow you because they want to, not because they have to. And that, I think that's the importance then, whereas, getting these negotiables and those expectations and the way that you coach across, because, essentially, yes, you are picking a player to be part of that system and, they're choosing to be part of it because of it. But, if they got a choice of colleges then which they can choose from, you want them to choose yours because then it's going to be the right choice for them and to enjoy it, because once they make that college choice, there's no sort of going back on it. They can't go back in a time machine and unpick that and choose to go somewhere else. So for them, it's quite that important time, because once you only have that opportunity with them, that opportunity then is gone for life, because as we know, life moves on and time is, unforgiving in that sense, because we can't relive those moments. So when it comes down to choosing it, and they're lucky enough to have a coach like you and be part of that coaching environment, then it's a key choice for them to really take away.
Thank you. But yeah, because that is, for them, that's it's very, they're not just buying a bicycle. They're paying for 4 years of their life with college, and so when we go through that recruiting process, we want to let them understand that that it's not a high pressure decision. If it turns out that us and the way we do things isn't for them, that's okay. They go on and they look at other places, but having that kind of environment in the process, I think, allows us to get those players that we really want and that fit our culture well, because we're very upfront about it in the beginning, and it's a conversation. It's a far more collaborative effort with those recruits than it is just if they know that if there are rejections or if they don't want to come to us, they can. There's no fear behind it, and it makes it much easier, I think, with us to find those players that we want with the way that we approach it.
And I love that. I love what you say about fear, because players can have a lot of fear because they're young people in themselves, and as we know as humans, it's quite hard to go and approach people about a situation, especially if we don't have the confidence behind it. So being a young person part of a college program which they're choosing to be part of, and it's going to maybe determine their future, and they got maybe a one-shot chance at it, and sometimes then they go, oh, this is the coach's way, and I have to do what they say, and has to be done like this in this order to maintain being part of that. And I know I've been part of systems where the players have had to conform to the academy manager, because if he didn't like him, he was out the door and gone, and it doesn't matter. And that's such a difficult sort of thing to see from the outlook. But for those players, I think fear is something that we don't really try to take away from players, because some coaches absolutely thrive off the fact that they can fully control a player and fully control their group because of that fear factor. And it's a real shame then players can't go and approach that situation. And it's only in 10 years, once that confidence grows and they've had that reflection, where they could have gone, I could have asked that question, and if I didn't like the answer, 10 years would have still passed, and it wouldn't have, it didn't really impact me in terms of here and now. I wouldn't feel those emotions, so it would have just been part of that moment in that time.
Yeah, and you hit it on the head with the fear and some coaches wanting to control the way they do things. I think so many forget or just it gets pushed to the side of how mental this game is, and how much they have to go through mentally, and when they're on the field, off the field, whether you're in the lineup, you're out of the lineup, or you're breaking in. So having hopefully, and what we hope with the environment that we're creating, it allows them to play and do what they want to do without getting in their own head. If we're only telling them this is the way you must do it and you must do it this way, that's only going to affect their mental state.
And that's another thing which I'm seeing here in education right now is a lot of roboticness in terms of the students themselves. And you must do this, you must sit behind the desk, you must listen, you must conform, you must do this lesson to lesson to lesson all day long, and then repeat it next day, and then do this for X amount of days throughout every year, and do it for X amount of years until you reach a certain age, and then you've got a choice to be free-flowing. And it's like, well, we live quite a difficult life, and as much as those expectations and the way that we want to have players, students in terms of conforming, it's quite difficult then, because they're not really being a young person and not really having those experiences. And I say to the kids, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not in education now as a student, because I remember when I was in it, I was like, it was fun, it was enjoyable, and things were nowhere near like they were now. And I think we're over-exaggerating on terms of expectations and the way that we want young people to conform, rather than, that free-flowing identity and trying to find themselves, and therefore that creativity and curiosity which needs to be evolved. So I think we've gone so far, and now we sort of need to sort of go back and then sort of go in the other direction, because I think we've pushed so far in one direction, we're sort of paddling in a little circle.
No, I would agree, and the way that we promote them to when they're on the field, if we're only in training sessions, if we're making the decisions for them, or if we're shouting on the sidelines, you got to do this, this, and this, they cannot think for themselves. They can't, when they're in those situations where their coach can't shout to them, if we've only told them one way of doing things, how are they going to, analyze and look at what's in front of them and be able to make decisions for themselves, but not just on the field, in life. The leadership development stuff that we put them through is to help them themselves, help them to develop their own confidence, their own confidence in their abilities, and then their own confidence to help others, and their confidence in what they know, and their confidence to speak and help others. And so we hope to do that both on and off the field, and grow them, as they, are young adults and growing up and going into the workforce. That's like you said, if it's just strict, how much are they getting from that?
And it sounds like a great environment to be in, because that's very much like how I am. I work in education at the moment, and then studying to be a teacher, then to go back into the academy pathway as a head of education in Interchanging Academy to coach alongside it, and then sort of trying to evolve an academy from there, and seeing where coaching takes me if I'm lucky enough. Or I might end up over in America coaching. I don't know where life's going to take me, but I've got a few horizons ticking. And it's in that sense, whereas where I work in behavioural behaviour right now. I like kids to be free-flowing and try to express themselves and to be free-flowing thinkers and spirits as such. Not so much in terms of this, hippie-style free thinkers where they're so laid back and that extent of things, but just that freedom and enjoyability to have, whereas, behavior should be, this is discipline, this is the expectation, this is how you should be. And I'm like, no, that's not part of my philosophy. I just can't seem to hone in on it in terms of what I'm doing in terms of score. And it sounds similar towards what you're doing, because it sounds very free flowing, sounds creative, sounds dynamic, sounds a great program that allows young people to excel and grow within their own time frame and rates, and they can actually enjoy being the players, and they can approach you, and there's no fear factor, and the system is changing. It's great to be part of. So it's a big compliment to you and your team and what you're doing so far, because it sounds like a great program.
Thank you. And we can only hope. I mean, that is our intent. That is the environment we try to create. But you don't really know for sure. But as we have that open conversation with them, we are constantly asking for feedback and seeing how we continue to grow and how we can continue to help them. So thank you. I appreciate that.
That's right. That's no problems at all. And it's great to sort of be in the coaching world, because coaching isn't this set thing of this is coaching and this is exactly what it is, because not realistically, and that's one of the things that frustrates me about courses that we do, because they're like, oh, this is the competency, you must have to meet X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, well, if Pep Guardiola and Mourinho and Ferguson and Emma Hayes and Cruyff all done this course and they all coached in the way you wanted to, we would never have seen Cruyff, Guardiola, Mourinho. So realistically, coaching isn't this thing. This is just a platform to try and get to somewhere. And say you had a 10-year period and there was no sort of accountability over those 10 years, and it was going to be right, you're going to get the 10 years regardless of the outcomes. And so say you've had 500 players that have come through the program. 100 of them have only been successful over that 10-year period. Only 100, which is a great number of successful players to develop mind, but that's an average of 10 per year. And you've had the other, say, 250 are happy, they've had good outcomes, a learning experience, good jobs, good careers, maybe married at that point or going on relationships, kids, and are excelling in life. And you've got these 100. So the university or college have been like, right, you haven't done well enough in terms of getting players to be professional. But for you, which are you happier with? Getting these 100 players to come through as professional, or seeing the others, say 250, being happy and doing well in their lives from your perspective as the impact as a coach?
I mean, for all of them being happy and doing in their lives, I've played with players that are miles better than me, that are some of the best players I've ever played with, but going on and playing professionally just wasn't what they wanted to do. And that didn't end up being what they did in their career, but that, she's married now, she's got a house, and that's what made them happy. So I hope to just help them develop with whatever it is they want to do in the future, because that is the reality, that we live in, that most of the players that we coach, won't go on with professional, just of how our system is set up. But yeah, I would say probably just helping them, in their lives, and like going back to why I do what I do. I grew up, watching my dad coach. I grew up watching the positive impact that he had on all those players, and that they still come back to him. They still call him Coach Browning. They still check in, when the years down the line. So for me, that is the biggest impact that you can have.
And that's what I'm, sort of alluding to in that point, because, it's difficult world coaching, because there are KPIs, there are accountabilities, there are these expectations. And, the whole point of coaching in terms of certain programs or formats is to get professional players and get them to a point. But if you've got these players which are then connecting with you and still have that relationship and are looking back going, oh, do you know what, Courtney made me really happy, or I enjoyed being coached by her, I enjoyed my time. Whereas some kids look back and like, oh, I hated my college experience, I hated going through the program, because it is so disciplined and so intense, because they miss out on the moments, their relationships are impacted, they're traveling, etc. And it's a lot for a young person to take on. And some look back and going, oh, I wish I'd done more of the social thing, or it was a bit more laid back. Whereas when these kids are happier in life and they're going, oh, do you know what, I actually enjoy being part of Courtney's roster and X, Y, and Z, then I think that just shows, although that isn't accountable and isn't a KPI, just the impact in terms of what coaches are having, which isn't then measured, which is such an unfortunate thing in life then in that perspective.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That's something that I really enjoy, being able to be that person in their life, especially, there's very few female coaches. There's not many of us around. A friend of mine is just starting out coaching, and she and I have talked about that. We didn't have that growing up. We didn't have that influence. But getting to be that for someone, and just as a coach in general, getting to be someone in their life, that it can help them. I remember seeing the video of, I don't know if you remember the video of Righty, seeing his old teacher that helped him.
Oh, Ian Wright, yes.
Like that's why I do what I do. That, to help and to grow.
And that's exactly what I was there for, because, we're in a coaching world, and coaches, might have this stepping stone platform, as I said earlier on, to try and get to a certain point, and they're ready to excel really quickly. So therefore, they go through a lot of players, a lot of groups, and, they're happy to sort of tread on players that get to where they need, whereas other coaches will free flow through their strategy and get there. And these players will go, oh, do you know what? I actually had a great relationship with that coach. And if you can be part of that and be the coach which, incites that change and has that relationship, or a player sees them 10 years later and they're like, oh, how are you doing, etc. That's the sort of relationship that I want to have with every young person that I work with, whereas I actually enjoy the respect that I have. And that's where I sort of find it hard working in behaviour now, because, I see some of the staff above me and they're like, discipline, discipline, discipline. So that's all they do to these kids. And these kids absolutely love me, and that's not sort of bigging myself up in any way. I just know that because they will respond to me better than they respond to them. And I'm like, do you know what? In 10 years, when these kids are having lives and they've moved on, they're not going to be serial killers, because they're actually decent kids, and I can see it within them. And they just don't like score, and that's it. They just don't like score, but they got good characteristics, they got good personality, they will land jobs, they will do well in life, and I can see it in them. It's just score isn't for them. So when I see them in 10 years and I get the respect off them, I'll be like, yes, got them. Whereas when they see the other people above me in 10 years and they're hurling abuse at them, I think I'd rather be the one who's like, yes, get in.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because the impact that you've made on them at a crucial point in their lives, to see that 10 years on, know that they're still appreciative of what you've done for them. I couldn't agree more.
And that's what I love, working with young people in this sort of platform that we're in, because, in 10 years you could go, do you know what, I hated school, but you know what, Sir was all right, I liked him, he was decent. And if that's what we're doing in terms of then coaching and the world that we're in, I think that's a very important component that we naturally bring, and you naturally bring, and it's very exciting to have. So when it comes through to then this coaching at college level, do you have to then sort of be a qualified, say, college lecturer or teacher, or is it just like college roles and then you're able to coach? How does that sort of look?
So that depends on university. Some schools you do have to you will instruct a class. Where I am at, no, we don't do any of that. We do have kind of secondary duties, whether it's for me, not currently, but my boss, he has to work with event management or doing other things with just helping out other departments within the sports department. But for the most part, it's just situation to situation.
And so do you have to be sort of hold like a qualified teacher status or a qualified coach status, or is it just say you could have been I don't know, a window cleaner, and then fancy going into coaching and then got a coaching job in college? Could that sort of work that way, or does it have to be a teacher to be a coach then?
The natural track is usually you go through a graduate assistant position, which is your paid for schooling, and then you go into an assistant or a head coaching position. As for qualifications, most through the hiring process, it's athletic directors, it's presidents of the university or that are hiring you. So you don't necessarily, like, having coaching licenses on your resume. You want to have at least a C license or usually to have, but again, it depends on the person hiring. The main thing that you usually definitely need is a master's. So I got a master's in something I don't really care about, just to be able to coach. They don't care what you get a master's in, they just having that on your resume. So it's not necessarily that you cannot be a college coach without a master's, but when you apply, there's a stack of people that have a master's, and then there's the stack of everybody else that gets looked at next. So that's usually the sort of qualifications that you have to go through.
That's just sort of an interesting take, because, I think, if we were to do that here in Britain, I think there would have to be some kind of status which because we're very big on that here in the UK. Whereas, if you're a full-time, say, college coach, you'd have to have the status of being a registered, qualified coach to apply at that. Whereas, some people might go, do you know what, I want to change my career and I've done X, Y, and Z and I've got this, and then I want to go into this and not have that status. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it was just, trying to understand that status point, whether you have to have a status to go through to get through. So then in that sense then, whereas you have that master's and you've done well and you have put in that time and study and commitment, etc., and you might then come up against someone, say, on a job interview who hasn't got that master's, but they might land it. Would you find that then frustrating in that sense, or you happy, to go through?
Frustrated. I don't know. I've personally not been put in that situation. I don't know if that would frustrate me or not. But I would want to just So I'm not sure how to answer that question. I don't know. I don't think it would frustrate me, but it would just, I would learn from it. I would interview process, you're either getting the job or you're learning from it. You're learning, okay, why did this person get it above me? What can I do? What other things? Because it's not just the masters, it's what else do you bring to the table? Do the masters is the bare minimum to get you in that pile, but what coaching courses are you doing? What are you showing them? Of what and how you want to evolve, and what other things. I'm pursuing. I will be pursuing probably in the summer, continuing strength and conditioning certifications, other things that I can bring to the table. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know how I would feel.
No, it's just an interesting sort of ploy in terms of the American system, because I've got some knowledge, but I'm not a master in terms of having that knowledge. So everyone that I speak to, I try and understand a little bit more about it, and just to try and get that perspective behind it, and just to get how people feel about it, and just to understand it a bit more from the outset in terms of that. Go on.
A best way to explain it probably is, again, it's situation to situation, because soccer, football is not the main sport here. It's American football. It's not the main sport in our country. So I think I mentioned it a little bit. Athletic directors or the people that are hiring us, they might not have any background in soccer at all. Usually, athletic directors are often retired American football coaches, or it really depends on who is conducting that hiring process. So you hope that the committee that is conducting it is, you have college coaches on it, or you have you have the men's coach and the women's coach on it, or you have other coaches that know how to find the best person for that position. But if that helps you kind of understand the system that we're in, it really depends, because you don't know who is in that role. It's not where you go to a club and that is all they do. That is all they do is that, and having a knowledge of that, whereas they might, sometimes you'll see on resumes when you apply for a position in the U.S. as a college coach, you'll list your C license, your D license, your E, and your F. All they need is the C license. That's all. That's the qualification that matters. But the athletic directors might not know that. They might, they've got 4 other certifications. It depends on who it really depends on who it is, and how that affects the process, and how that affects the type of person that they bring in.
Definitely more knowledge than I previously had coming on speaking to you. So in that sense then, where you're currently at, because America is just, it blows my mind how big America is, and how you can go from one state and then it's completely different to the other state that you go to. So is it more of, you don't mind going to the other side of America if a really good job come up, or is that something where you go, do you know what, it's actually too far in America?
For me, I don't. I would happily go anywhere. I've had this talk with my parents on where I see myself going. I'm like, if I'm saying now that I would love to live in England, how can I say that I wouldn't want to live on the other side of the side of the country? So it really just depends on the program, on the the school that I'm looking at. As those jobs, when I do later down the line get it into that process. It will be situation to situation. It's not, I would never live there, or I would never live there. It just, I want to make sure that it's the right fit. I want to do this the correct way. I want to make sure that the next person that I work for or with is someone that I think will help me continue to grow and show me a different way, just continue to learn. So state to state doesn't really matter.
Definitely interesting, because my best mate, he lived in the UK, and we grew up in primary school and secondary school, and he was very fortunate, and I was very unfortunate because he left me, but he was very fortunate I think he lived in Florida, and now he lives in California, so he's always texting me pictures of like Palm Spring beaches and stuff like this, and I'm looking and like, mate, it's raining over here. And he's like, just get a job over here, come and apply for LA Galaxy, da 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 da. And this is where my peak of America has come from. It is coming from him. But he's made me very jealous of the fact that he's living in California right now.
I will say maybe that would be the only thing that influenced me. I'm not going to go anywhere very hot. I'm too pale for the sun. So that's the only thing that might change. I don't know if I would go to Florida necessarily. But yeah, and
that's the thing with America. There's so many different states, because you got Texas, which is just wow on its own. Then you got like Virginia. Then you got I might be completely wrong on my states here. I'm no expert, and I feel in Ross's friends 50 state quiz game, but it's just mind-blowing how different your life could be depending on where you go and live in America. Whereas in Britain, you go down from the south, they got south accents, you go to the north, they got north, and that is the only difference between those kind of people. It is Britain for you in that sense, whereas America, you are like a very big American, or you might be like, yeah, we're just American, we ended up here.
That's why I think, like you said, there's so many. I'm able to just in one country I can go up north, I can go into a little colder climate, I can go to a warmer climate, or different areas, different cultures, different. It's like you said, it's vast. But yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's even better, because say you worked on the national level then, and you had a selection of players right across America and programs to fit from. You'd have such a great choice of characters, because you'd have a national program of individuals coming through, whereas you'd have so many different things which people could bring to the table. So you got people from the south who've got like a culture down there, and the people up north got a different culture. Then they're bringing foods with them, and then essentially that creates a team, and you just gotta sit back with your feet up and go, yeah, they're just gonna do it all on their own.
Yeah, because we do pick players from multiple different states and different areas. We focus on more certain couple states just as what we feel we can pull. What is financial, just the smart. We don't want to go recruit on the other side of the country and be like, oh no, actually, we want you to come all the way back here. So we strategically do it, but our incoming class, we have a kid coming over from California. So you never know who you're going to end up with, and you never know who you're able to pull into your program. But there is, like, given our reach and given where we are now, there is certain, just within a certain radius that we look for.
Definitely interesting in that scope. And when it comes down to, say, your own coaching style then, do you tend to coach more from a side and have, say, like the team in front of you? Or are you very, like, in the middle and seeing things happen as you're in there? Or are you a bit of balanced or both? Or are you more of sit up in the stands with a headset on, just getting feedback and seeing what's happening?
For me, I've found I am better with the individual. I am better with it pulling one aside, giving them a little critique, or in the run of play, giving them a little critique. I'm working on the collective, transitioning from player to coach and putting that, being able to coach the whole group, is something I'm still honing with my craft and still learning as a young assistant from, a fantastic mentor that I have to continue to do that. So I think that for me is more, it's never up and shouting, and we don't have headphones, they're shouting up from the stands, but in with them and getting to know them. I love the whole players manager kind of thought process. I want to know, every kid learns differently, every kid is motivated differently, every player needs different, one you can shout at across the field, and that's what gets them going, that's what gets them to be able to go play, whereas another kid, if you do that, they shut down. So that's kind of the approach that I take, and the approach I'm trying to learn and get better at, and be able to connect with those players. But yes, if that answers your question.
No, it's a great answer, and it's definitely interesting and take to have on things, because as I've sort of coached, I've always sort of coached from the side, but as then I've sort of evolved, I'm more in the middle. I love being in the middle, and I love seeing things happen around me, whereas a lot of coaches, like, if you're coaching from the middle, you can't see the whole picture if you're not standing from the side. I'm like, yeah, but I can see the detail in here if I want to recreate something, whereas I might have just missed that if I was on the side, because I've actually seen it happen. But it's what works for every coach. Again, is finding what happens balance for themselves, and in terms of what you want to do and how you're going to do it, because as you say, you might have players which react differently to how you work with them, and some might like the fact that they can have a little conversation and ask you something, whereas if you're stood on the side, they're like, oh, I can't ask that question because I'm right here in the middle, therefore then that fear factor is recreated. And then it's just that sort of interest then in terms of how people approach things and that sort of take.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Each, like you said, each responds differently. And also, every player, just like I as a coach, we all have our own strengths, and so it's not, you don't need to be a master of everything. It's you focus on what makes you, the best, or what you do well, and can you improve on that. That is what they bring to the team, and I also, I know from my own skill sets what I find works best for me, and we try and push them to do that, and to just not just develop their game, but know what they bring, what that extra element that they bring, and push them to have freedom with that, and to enjoy.
And in terms of that then, so say you've got a very short pre-season, which you do have, and you're not able to put on as many activities as you'd like to integrate all the new players and build that squad harmony. So the head coach says, you're right, this week has to be a session based on communication, and this is the only session we got with them because we got a game on Sunday as our first pre-season game, so we need communication to be the key core here. What session would you put on to try and create communication with your team?
The session itself, in terms of like what rondos we would do, what position player, what training game, that I wouldn't be as sure, but for me I would be reiterating that, and that was something that not just myself, but I would use my players to help me work on communication, because we are leading them and we're teaching them one thing, but we are also, our captains, our leaders on the team. We want to encourage them to help them all improve. We often say, I don't care if you're a freshman or a senior, if you see something, if you want to say something, if you want to speak up. So when we're doing sessions with them, we'll present it to the day. This is what we're going to work on. This is the concept that we're going to work on. This is the focus. And then it's a collaborative effort to either we're helping them with communication. I'm reiterating it, or it's the captain, or it's any of them that have that confidence in themselves to help them constantly tell each other and help push them to have the confidence to speak and have the confidence to communicate on the field.
I love that, and it's just that I was asked by a coach the other week to come in and do a session on communication because his team were lacking in, and I was just sat here, I was like, I don't think one session is really going to break the mold in terms of communication. So I can get them to do little things, but I said, realistically, you're looking at more off-the-field activity. I said, you're looking at the existing core relationships. I want to know why they're not communicating. I said, this is much more than a one-session standalone thing. So this is much more than me going, all right, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to try and get this out. I said, I'll do it to try and get it out, but this isn't going to give you the outcomes that you're expecting. And I was trying to look at that bigger picture, and it was just sort of then, which I was thinking about your short pre-season, if you were going to approach that, or whether you would look at the bigger picture of things and how then you would look at it from that strategic point of view. And when you then say you have a typical session throughout the year, is there a certain way that you tend to style your session? So say, for example, an arrival activity, an activation, straight into a warm-up, then into a technical, then into an SSG, or how do you tend to plan your sessions?
Yeah, so normally, I think our players, they have their own little game that they play while we're setting up before the session starts. But then we go through rondo session paired with movement activation, and then we have a positional play and then a training game. And so there is one or two concepts that we're trying to teach throughout that whole session. So the rondo is where we first introduce it, and then we put them through a positional play. And where they continue to work on it and hone on that. And then the training game is just let them go. Let them play, let them show. And for there, in the training game, for us, we see how well we taught it that day. We see how well those concepts sunk in. We give them a chance to, we taught you how to do that concept for today. Let's see how the retention was. And then with the journaling after, we get the retention from that as well. But we get to see kind of, okay, they got that concept, but the other one they might not have got so well. The next session, that will kind of change how we do things, and we might find a different way to explain it to them. We've used loads of analogies, different ways to simplify it to help them improve. But that's usually how it runs.
I hope to see a book one day with a picture of your face on there, and it's going to be called The Free Flow Thinkers, and it's going to be based on that philosophy, because again, once it comes down to it, there is no sort of then real structural, well, there is a structure, but there isn't like, this is the format week in, week out, and we're going to do it this way. It's more of that free flowing, oh, this is the structure this week, it might change next week, there might be different the week after, and I think that works, because I was always very typical of like warm up, technical, SSG, and that's how I've done it for years. But it's only until I learned and evolved and watched other sessions that I could go, do you know what, I might do a whole session, whereas I might start with a small-sided game, then do a technical, then back to a small-sided. 1 week I then might do my original standard structure. 1 week I might just do a small-sided, then work backwards. It's just interesting, because then I think it changes up every week, so therefore the players aren't fitting in terms of that mold, and then the expectations are different, and therefore I'm getting that curiosity and thinking, and everything changes, and I'm seeing more benefits than if I was to carry on with a standard structure for, say, a 7-week period.
Yeah, no, because like I said, we do rondo position-based training game. That is the structure of it, but the type of rondo that you're doing that day, or the type of positional game, or the type of training game that you're doing changes based on the concept that you're using. So we have, over the season, we have a way that we are trying to teach the concepts in a certain order to help promote cognitive development, help promote the learning. But if we're jumping around, constantly changing, constantly jumping all over the place, it might be hard for them to continue to develop and learn. But it's not that we do the exact same thing every day. There is some sort of structure to what we do and how we want to teach it and how we feel that they learn it best. But it changes in the way that we do it to keep it fresh, and the drills that we put in, or the training screens that we put in.
And one thing that I love is that coaching is this free-flowing thinking world, which I said, and that's my philosophy. And I've been very lucky where I've worked in education to sort of combine teaching, coaching, mentoring, and all these sort of different aspects. And I was coaching a team a couple of years back, and my assistant manager had a big background in sales, and he was asked to do a coaching program with his sales staff, and he had to present what he was going to do to them to his boss. And he said, I'm going to teach him to do this. And his boss asked the question, are you teaching or are you coaching? Because you're a coach here. And with a lot of what you're saying, you're like, oh, we're going to teach him this, we're going to teach him this, we're going to teach him this. And then it got me thinking, because I was like, realistically, there is a fine line between teaching and coaching, but you're amalgamating a learning process. And I think it is impossible to work with players, especially at college level, and not teach them as well as coach them. And I think you need to have teaching in coaching. So for me, if this was an interview, you would have got the job ages ago.
Well, you're absolutely right, because there is the teaching, there is the coaching, but there has to be that balance. We have to. I'm not just, as a college coach, we're not just getting that group that we get every year. Just how can we win games? How can we do this, and then move them on and push them out? It's I want to see that I want to teach and help and develop and see that player grow and continue to reach that potential that we know they have through their time with us. And thank you. I'm glad I got the job.
There's no problems, but honestly, if I'm ever heading up or recruiting or anything, you would be on my list. Honestly, I'm gutted you're not in Wales, because I think you're a wonderful individual. I think you're a wonderful coach, just from what I've heard here, because you think exactly the way that I'd like to think and the way that I would have my teams to set up. And I think to find someone like you and be part of that very unique small group of coaches, the way that we're going to think and do things differently, I think that you're an asset to the game, and I think you're wonderful.
Thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate this opportunity to discuss it. It's been helpful.
No, it's a pleasure, and it's only upon reflection I felt like some of my questions have been really intense and thrown at you, and some of the questions that that I sent you earlier on in the week, and there wasn't any way that I'm trying to throw you off or catch you out or put you on the spot. It's just I'm like, oh, she said that, so I'm going to pull this off, and it's just that's what I love about the podcast, because it's, as much as I said to you, I've got a structure, it's more of like, oh, we might do this, we might do that, we might do, and it's not to catch you out or anything.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. No, I appreciate the way that you know, like you said, it was just kind of a conversation, and certain things that you said or certain things that I said kind of promoted which way we take it. But no, you know, you know, sometimes I struggle on the spot, but I didn't feel that too much from, you know, the questions that you're asking me. So thank you, and it helped me kind of reflect on, like, you know, what I do, and some of your questions, you know, really pushed me to think about, you know, more in depth of the way that we do things.
I think that's true to the podcast name, the Reflective Coach Podcast.
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
so
but it 100% was. I definitely was reflecting through this whole thing. So I appreciate the opportunity to do this.
well, I'm really glad, and I'm so glad you could come on, especially on a weekend when you have gone away, and I think that's pure commitment. But before you go, would you mind if I threw some quick fire questions at you?
Yeah, not a problem. Go for it.
Fab. So if you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
3 words. Approachable. Approachable. Inspiring, I hope.
Definitely, I agree with that one.
Approachable, inspiring. And genuine, I hope.
100%.
If I had to put it down.
I agree, 100%. I think they're great words. Inspirational and genuine, I would definitely put at the top 2. Wonderful. If you could spend a day with any coach or manager, who would it be and why?
Serena Wiegman. I want to see what she's done with that England team. Her or Pep Guardiola. I think me too.
Who you might have already answered this question, but who or is your role model?
My dad.
I thought so.
With playing, coaching. Yeah, definitely my dad.
And does he still coach now? Did you say?
No, as soon as I went up to college, he was done. But we always joke that when I do get my head position years down the line, that he'll come work for me.
That's what I was going to suggest then. Pull him out of retirement, bring him back. I think that would be a mighty duo.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun, I think.
So going back to your younger self now, you've got 2 cards on the table that have been given to you. One is a career as a full-time professional footballer and to enjoy a good career, or one is going, right, you've got a chance to be professional coach for however long you want to be a professional coach for. Which card would you choose?
If I answered that at age 5, it would have been the first one. Well, I think it's the second one. The second one being a coach. I growing up until college, I was always like, I want to be a professional footballer. I want to play. I want to do all this, and I've had my time as a player, and I still enjoy the game and playing a lot. But I also don't really like running around that much anymore. And I love what I'm able to do as a coach, and you know, from the mentors that I've had to learn from, I think that for me is what I prefer.
I love it. I think once you choose that second option, then it's always been within you that you are naturally always going to be a coach, and that's your calling. So I'm so glad you're doing coaching right now, because that's what it's always going to ended up to have been. If you had
yeah, definitely.
Sorry. If you had a choice of one job in the world, what job would it be?
I think it would be one job in the world would be either a head coach or because currently I still only see myself doing an assistant coach. I think I will know when I want to be a head coach. So if I choose that way, a head coach at a university that I feel is a program that supports me and that I can also wear many hats. I enjoy the strength and conditioning side. I enjoy the nutritionist side. I think there's a lot more that we can do for our players to help them succeed on the field and in life than in just coaching them through the sport. So I would like to be able to be my ideal position is where I am able to do both and be able to help them improve in both ways.
Good answer. A very different because a lot of people are like, it is this and it's that. But I think, that, again, that shows how genuine and inspirational that you are, because you're like, oh, I want to impact players. And if it doesn't mean being a head coach or an assistant coach, but I have this role and it means doing this across the board, then I think that it just shows what an asset of a person and a coach that you are and it can contribute. But if I had to put, say, an offer on the table of, say, the USA national women's team on the table or the English women's national team, which would you pick?
England.
I thought so.
England. Yeah, 100%.
And say the Chelsea job came up or the England job, again, does it stick with England?
Well, that's tough, because maybe Chelsea. Well, actually, no, I'm a QPR fan, so it wouldn't be Chelsea. Absolutely not, would not be Chelsea. But I think it would have to be where I'm at in that point of life. I don't know if I could answer that now. There's no dream job necessarily. I know where I want to go and where I want to grow, but I'll know when I'm at that point what the environment that I want to be in. I don't know if that's kind of a sideways way to answer your question, but that's for me the most truthful way.
No, it's a nice one, and you don't see many QPR fans, to be honest with you, especially out in the States.
Yeah, no, my dad's from Uxbridge, and so it's QPR.
You might start a trend over in the US then. If you had the chance to coach any player, what player would it be?
Myself. I wish I had the knowledge that I wish the knowledge I have that I've gained now. Before I think I grew up and I had a knowledge of the game, but then from my mentor and getting into these new courses and learning even more, some of the things that I know now and some of the things that I'm able to do now, I wish I had that as a young now coming player.
What are your 3 non-negotiables?
Character. Is just the character for me is the biggest one. Character. Another way to phrase it, but just character, being accountable, and I don't know if I can give you a 3, but for me, because I think character for those is the main one that it comes down to.
Good choice. And what is one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
Getting to see the impact that you've had. Because for a while I'd been in two minds. I had the passion of both the strength conditioning and I had the passion of coaching. And then as I've been putting myself in more scenarios where I've been challenging myself as a coach and stepping more out of my comfort zone, and I got to, in my course in Spain that I did, and I got to work with a young player, and I got to see them improve and have conversations with them that I wanted to hear at that age. I think that is probably what I enjoy the most.
Well, I love it, and that wraps up such a wonderful afternoon of talking to you, or morning where you are. But I really do appreciate it, as I said, especially when you're away, and it's been so great to meet you and connect and get this to happen. And I know I'd really love to have you on again, but honestly, today has been wonderful. And if you saw me quickly jotting things down, it's because I wanted to take them away. But honestly, it's such a wonderful episode, and it's only a massive thanks from me.
Yeah, no, massive thanks from me as well. I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad that I'm very grateful that you asked me, because this is something I've never done, and I feel like my mentor's been pushing me to do things that might scare me a little bit, but it's how I grow, it's how I evolve, and being able to do the reflective podcast, I did reflect, and I think I got a lot that I could take away from this. So thank you for this opportunity.
No problems at all. It's a pleasure at any time, and enjoy the rest of your time away and some downtime, and maybe switch off from coaching a little bit, but enjoy, and thank you again.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
I will. Thank you.